French police fired tear gas and flashballs to disperse crowds of striking students in Paris and Lyon. Around 300 schools have been blockaded nationwide, and there's more protests against pension reform to come. In the grip of a petrol drought, French motorists scramble to fill their tanks. With production at all oil refineries hit by strikes, the government is stressing that there's enough to go round. And Afghanistan's future is under the spotlight as key players meet in Rome. For the first time, Iran has joined the high-level talks. The United States says Tehran has a role in bringing the country's 9-year conflict to an end. Thank you for joining us here on France 24. Those are the international news headlines. First, cars and tyres on fire, smashed bus stops and riot police using tear gas. That was a picture in the Paris suburb of Nanterre on Monday. Clashes broke out after students tried to blockade a secondary school there. There were similar tensions in Lyon, France's second largest city. 290 rioters have now been arrested. Youngsters across the country have been spurred into action by widespread strikes over pension reform. Yet more nationwide demos are planned this Tuesday. Speaking on France 24 earlier, Victor Grèze from France's National High School Union backs student participation only if it's peaceful.
The problem today is that the students are joined together to express their disagreement to this reform. But unfortunately, some other groups of people tried to join the movement just to break everything down. And once again, we called all the students to act and to block if they decided it together in a really pacifist way. We do not want any violence. It's just groups of people who took the opportunity of the movement just to go and break everything down. But once again, I would like to say that if there is this kind of movement happening, it's also because of the government. Because when you have in front of a school 6 big buses full of policemen waiting for anything to happen, of course, it gets a little bit tensed. We asked the government for an appointment. I've got here a letter that was sent to our Ministry of Work 6 months ago. We asked him for an appointment to be able to discuss the problems, and the government did not even answer to us. So now they have to face their responsibilities. They did not want to discuss, they did not want to see us, and now they have to be responsible for the violence they are creating themselves.
Another consequence of the strikes is that fuel is getting hard to come by. With blockades at all of France's oil refineries, motorists have been rushing to the pumps. As many as 1,800 petrol stations are running short. With warnings France is already dipping into its reserves, the government says there's plenty to call on and that airports are well supplied.
French oil workers defied the government and refused to get back to work. At the Grand Puy refinery east of Paris, some burned tires and others formed a human chain to prevent people from entering the plant.
No loading at the Grand Puy refinery, except possible loading for security reasons, of which none is planned. At the Grand Puy refinery, there'll be no loading until 6 a.m. tomorrow.
A dozen refineries are blocked across the country. Students and truck drivers are also on strike, but oil workers have the most disruptive tactics. Fearful drivers have flocked to gas stations in numbers, but found many empty.
Everything's closed. None of the pumps work.
Everywhere there are queues in Créteil at least 2 hours long. It's shameful. They're taking the French people hostage. It's shameful.
40 minutes. 40 minutes and it's not getting any better.
About 1,500 gas stations are disrupted. Some are experiencing shortages. Others have simply run dry. Sunday, Prime Minister François Fillon pledged to do anything to prevent fuel shortages. According to the International Energy Agency, France is already reaching into its strategic reserves. The problem is getting the fuel to the stations. Tuesday, labor unions plan a new nationwide strike across the public sector. Severe disruptions to air travel, public transport and schools are expected.
Delegates from 46 countries have met in Rome to talk about progress in Afghanistan, and for the very first time, Iran was among them. The United States said it had no problem with Tehran taking part, recognising its strategic role in ending the 9-year Afghan conflict. The discussions focused on a gradual handover of power to local forces and whether the Taliban should feature in peace talks.
Could the Afghan Taliban be a part of any national reconciliation? Possibly so, according to high-level representatives from nearly 50 countries holding talks in Rome on Afghanistan's future.
So if people want to be reconciled or reintegrated, the government will welcome them in and the international community will assist in that process.
As well as drawing the Taliban into negotiations, the talks centred on an eventual transition from foreign to Afghan security forces. Senior diplomats agreed a handover of power could begin next year, and that Afghanistan would still receive aid after NATO forces pulled out. Even Iran's involvement in the talks came as part of a comprehensive approach to maintaining stability.
Without support from our neighbours, we will have difficulty achieving success on peace and security matters in particular.
Despite sketching a timeline for domestic forces to take over security matters, Afghan officials remain wary over the departure of foreign troops. Violence in the country has seen a major upswing in recent years, something that seems to bode ill for Afghanistan's undertrained and poorly equipped military.
They planted what they thought were explosives outside 2 synagogues in New York. 4 men have been found guilty of plotting to blow up the Jewish centres in the Bronx district. They also plan to shoot down military planes with surface-to-air missiles. The 4 were arrested in May 2009 after an FBI sting operation, and they now face the possibility of life in jail. Prosecutors said David Williams, the man at the heart of the plot, was motivated by anti-Semitism. To New Zealand now, which has been rattled by a magnitude 5 earthquake. Power lines and phone services have been cut in the southern city of Christchurch. No one's been injured by the tremor, although several buildings there have been evacuated. It's an aftershock from a magnitude 7 quake that hit Christchurch on September the 4th, wrecking thousands of homes. Next, forecasters say it's probably this year's most powerful storm. Super Typhoon Megi's been lashing the northern Philippines with winds up to 26 kilometres per hour. The cyclone tore roofs off homes, triggered landslides and sent thousands scrambling to safety. The death toll's now risen to at least 7, including a mother and 2 children whose house was crushed by a falling tree. The Category 5 storm is now expected to sweep towards China and Vietnam, already the victim of deadly floods. Just 2 months ago, the French island of Reunion was recognised as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. But now the jewel in the Indian Ocean has been ravaged by a week-long forest fire. And favourable weather conditions and the tireless work of firefighters have got the flames under control, but not before some 800 hectares of natural beauty went up in smoke.
OK, guys, go as far as possible. The start of the fire's over that way.
Less than 200 metres down this slope and things have taken a turn for the worse. Firefighters thought they'd brought the forest fire on Reunion under control by Sunday evening. But this wasn't the case.
We went to take a look, and we found the start of the fire, which was much closer to the parking lot. We've been constantly trying to cool the area down, to get to the fire, and then we'll attack it at the same time as a team on the other side.
Little remains on the surface now, but smouldering roots, as the fire picks up speed burning underground. Forestry workers have tried to create fire breaks with chainsaws, but firefighters who've emptied out tank after tank are now having to redouble their efforts.
We haven't been able to lay hoses out beyond the hills where the trees are. But overall, the fire's under control.
Ground teams are determined to cut off the fire completely, but despite its intensity, the situation is improving.
We'll get at the fire here, you on the other side. It's all good.
Water-bombing aircraft were grounded by bad weather at the beginning of the week, although conditions are set to improve in the next few days.
And finally, Britain's monarch is no stranger to luxurious gifts from heads of state. But on Monday, Chile's president handed Queen Elizabeth II a lump of rock at Buckingham Palace. It's the story attached that counts. The stone is from deep in the Atacama Desert and was brought to the surface by the second of 33 miners rescued there last week. Glowing with pride, Sebastián Piñera had earlier presented British Prime Minister David Cameron with his piece of mining memorabilia. The Chilean leader will next visit France and Germany on his tour of Europe. That's where we leave it for this bulletin, but there's more news in 20 minutes' time. Do stay tuned to France 24.